came to see my work. And I'm also thrilled that Noreen Mitchell is here from Hunters Bay radio program Arts Are Us. So we're just going to have a conversation, and hopefully you'll enjoy it, and hopefully it'll enrich your experience of the work. So
I'm going to welcome you all as well and say thank you for coming, and I'm so happy that you came to see and hear my friend Kate Brown speak about her art. I met Kate through Karen Cassian, my co-host at Arts to Us. I'm grateful to have met Kate, and she's become my friend. And I think some of you will know Kate also from her days as a friend of Huntsville Arts Society, and she was in the art space, has had exhibitions there, and also at the Huntsville Public Library. But I think you should all know as well that Kate was one of the founders of the Vicki Dodds Memorial Collection of art books, which is in Huntsville Public Library. And I want to thank you for that, Kate. I admire that for your dedication to your friend.
thank you.
And for all of us art lovers and art readers, that is a great collection. I'll just say that. So,
And it's growing,
yes,
slowly, yes.
thank you very much. I'm going to start actually, if I may, by congratulating you, Kate, on this lovely exhibition called Table of Contents. And it looks great in this gallery. And I'm so happy too that the Huntsville Art Society is able to provide this gallery space with the support of the town. Would you agree it's a nice thing?
Absolutely. I mean, the town is very supportive of the arts here, and having a space dedicated to exhibiting work is really key.
And you've had many exhibitions over your long career, your lengthy career, and sometimes in New York, sometimes here in Muskoka, as I mentioned. What's it like for you to have a show in this gallery?
In some ways, it's much harder, you know. Like I just showed this work back here in New York a few weeks ago. And it's not as nerve-wracking. Showing in your, you know, I think it must be like a sports team playing a hometown, you know. It's like that. It's harder, it's more emotional, I guess. When you're in a bigger place and you don't know as many people, or your connections aren't quite so deep-rooted, there's a bit of anonymity to it that allows you to not worry so much. Yeah, right.
So these works were created over the last year,
Yes,
and specifically for this exhibition.
yes.
And so are you happy now to see them hung all in one place?
I'm thrilled because I think that a work of art really isn't finished until it's exhibited. I mean, that's part of its life. It's part of its life for the artist, for me to see it, to see things that I didn't see before, to see things that perhaps I might do differently, to see things that maybe I'm not that happy with, and to give me a better view of the future in my studio. So, yeah.
And you've been an art student and an art teacher.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen your bookshelves
Oh, yes.
full of art books. And you continue to learn and you continue to explore, and you
Yes.
just were on a remote residency in New York City. And
Yes.
what I'd like to know is what you would, as a teacher, what would you advise people when they're looking at art? How do you begin to look at an exhibition?
Well, I think it's very important. It's like when you meet a person for the first time. If you're meeting a person for the first time and you're saying hello from a point of view of judgment, you're not going to learn anything. It's not going to be very fruitful. Whereas if you come across a painting or a work of art, you've never seen this thing before. You've never met it before. So you have to approach it with an open mind and an open heart and ask questions. What is this? Why is it like that? How did that become this way? Just like you would with a person, you know, try to understand its being.
Could we ask you what the title of the show means, Table of Contents? Does it have a significance?
Well, yes, I think it does, because of course, obviously in a book, Table of Contents, and these are bowls, and of course you know that my work revolves around space, and the reason I have the particular painting that I do on the poster, it's called Fishes in the Loaves. So we have a space, a bowl, an open system that's emptied and replenished, and it's full of everything. And in this particular case, it's full of faith, I think.
And you chose a bowl for a particular reason?
Well, I did because I wanted to insert an object into my abstraction. And I was, playing around with the figure, this and that. And then after my residency last year in Massachusetts, I came home and I thought, no, I think a bowl, it's the simplest form, it's the most recognizable, it's the oldest, it's the most universal, and that's what I will do. So.
And it fits very well with your long history of exploring perceptions of space.
It happened that way. It did, yes, it did. I didn't know that, but ultimately it did happen that way.
So in these bowls, do you have model bowls in your home?
No. I've got lots of bowls. I love bowls. No, I don't. In fact,
you could just see a collection of bowls.
No, I don't. In fact, I had to go to the dollar store to buy bowls for our peanuts, But no, I don't.
So they're visionary bowls.
Yeah, everything I do is visionary, and I think that I took that very early on from Picasso, who, when he was trying to paint Gertrude Stein, she was sitting for him, and he tried and tried, and you've probably all seen the portrait, it's quite famous. And he tried and tried to paint her picture, and he couldn't. And he got frustrated, and he took it home, and he finished it without looking at her. And he took it to her, and she said, well, it doesn't look like me now, but it will, and it did. And I think painting from the imagination is often, in a sense, truer than painting from the eye. I think we know things. We know a lot of things that we don't know we know. So I think not looking at something that you think you know well is a very good thing.
You have shown us the evolution of the painting here with Deep Dish.
Yes.
And would you comment on that? Because I know that there's a reason that you put it there for us to consider that.
Yes. Well, to be honest, that's how I've always worked, and it exhausts me. So I start, I have some sort of vision, and then I go through all of these different stages of the painting. And at any point I could have stopped. At any point I think they're decent paintings. They could exist on their own. So I wanted to show you that within that painting there are 8 paintings, and probably the same holds true for all of these. But one thing I wanted to work on when I went to the residency in New York was my method, because I should be able to paint the same painting more than once, if you know what I mean, as an exercise. I should have a method. And so that's where this painting over here came from. It's called Never the Same River. And I did that one to prove to myself I could paint the same painting sort of twice. I mean, you can't step in the same river twice, but that's why there are 3 similar paintings. So.
And Tim Rice was here earlier, and he said when he thought that when he saw it previously, perhaps on Instagram, that it was a different configuration. Is that possible?
It's possible.
And he said that's one of the delights of a triptych, that you could probably.
Although I don't.
No, it's meant this way.
It's meant this way, and there was another configuration. There was a slight difference, but because Tim is very visual and an artist himself, he's probably correct. But it was very similar to this. It's not like one was up and one was down or something.
No,
Yeah.
no, just the.
Yeah, he's right. He's right. Yeah.
That's fun. And the other one, I can't recall. Fathom, is that?
That's called Fathom. Yeah.
So we're lucky to have the New York show as well.
Thanks to Anna.
Yes, thank you very much.
Yes.
The topic of color is also bound to come up usually when we look at your work. You have kind of a limited palette of color quite often. Is that intentional?
Yes.
And would you want to talk about those colors?
Well, mostly it's intentional because I love the colors I use. I have crushes on all of them. But generally I like blue, black, and white because to me they're all colors of space. So that's, if you want to look for a reason, that's a reason. But I really love them. And of late I've added, some oranges and pinks and peaches. And I've also added this lavender color, which I love. It creeps up, because my mother's kitchen when I was growing up was the color of Thrills gum. I mean, you can imagine that's impressed on my mind, quite significantly, and it keeps cropping up. So and she had dishes and cutlery to match, so, and also beads on the window, that color. So it was very, so that color is starting to surface.
Your mother was a big influence on you.
Yes.
I liked when you talked to me once before about her reading Women's Wear Daily.
Yes.
Talk to us a bit about New York City and why that connection.
Well, you see, my mom ran away and joined the Air Force when she was 19 without telling her parents. And she ended up being one of 12 women chosen to form a cabaret troupe to entertain the troops in Europe, along with an orchestra. So for the duration of the war, my 19-year-old mother was doing 2 shows a day, and she came home and she had Crohn's disease, and I suspect post-traumatic stress. And she set about to create a wondrous installation, really, to live within. But one of her favorite activities, and how I most fondly remember her, is sitting in her chaise lounge, reading this paper that she would get every single day from New York. It was Women's Wear Daily, which I think is now morphed into W Magazine. This was a newspaper, and it would arrive, and you would get the textile quotes from the various companies. You would get the gossip from Studio 54. You'd find out what they're wearing on the catwalks in Milan, and she would read it to me. And that's how I first knew about New York, which is what I think it was a lot of fun.
But also she had an influence on your eye and the kinds of things she collected, and you didn't think of some of the things we might have thought as kitsch at all.
Oh, right. Well, yes. Because she'd been in Europe, she wasn't, she didn't have post-secondary education, but she'd been in Europe, so she was more worldly than a lot of the other mothers in the neighborhood. So we had things like a full-size bust of Michelangelo's David in gold in the living room, and we had this marvelous Capodimonte music box, like this big, and you push a button, and it would open to offer cigarettes, but it would play Arrivederci Roma. So there were these marvelous things around that when you're a kid, it's like, wow, so it was enchanting in a way. And also, I don't think it's kitsch, because kitsch is sort of a pejorative term, and I think that certainly as a child it inspired me, and I was aware that somewhere, once upon a time, there was an artist named Michelangelo because of this gilt bust in the living room. So, yeah.
Speaking of a rich environment, you brought along these little books, and they truly are little. I knew about these little books, but I didn't know they were this little.
Oh, you never saw them?
No, I have not seen them, so when I see them now, and I see on top Kandinsky, I know that these were in your father's den.
They were, and I found these when I was about 7 years old, and I reached up in the shelf, because they were just my size, and I was going through them like this, literally like this. Oh yes, Magdalene, da-da-da, Matisse, pretty, oh that's nice. And then I came to Kandinsky, and I thought, now this is something, this is like really something. So, I was an abstract thinker from the get-go, I think.
So would you call your style of painting abstract expressionism? Or is it an outgrowth of that? What is it? Does it have a style?
Well, I would just say it's abstract. It's just abstract.
But certainly you would have studied in New York and in your other studies, art history, these movements, right?
Oh, absolutely, yes.
Yeah.
And oddly enough, I used to teach drawing at the Toronto School of Art, and I love to draw. You'd never know that, really, but yeah.
I was going to ask you about what is in the paintings in terms of ellipses and lines and dots. You've been interested in shape and form for a very long time.
Yes.
And when I was talking to Sam Love about the show, what she thought, she was noting the curves of the lines.
Right.
And we were both wondering whether it's a physical activity for you to paint, especially with large canvases.
Yes, it's a very different thing to work large, and it's more like dancing. Like if you're standing at that canvas and you've got your brush like this, I mean, you're at best. It's like very, very physical. Much different than working small. It's like working small is more eye-hand coordination. Working large, I think, involves more of you somehow.
I touched a bit on the media that you've used and the tools you've used. One of your favorite tools, which appears to have been used again here, is the eyedropper. Can we talk about the eyedropper?
Sure. Well, when I lived in the woods, and I was sort of afraid to make a mark on canvas. I don't know why, I just was. And I started to make tear catchers, and then I started to think about drops, and then I started to use an eyedropper to make drops, and it made me think about tears. And Mary will remember this from being at my studio with her friend Rona. We talked about how in fairy tales, it's when the tears appear that the magic happens. And I always remembered our conversation about that. So yeah, so I started using these eyedroppers. I like the significance of it because it means you're trying to see better. You're trying to heal your eyes. And so I do drops, and then I work on 360. So I work all around the canvas to make a grid, or not always a grid, like this is necessarily a grid. But it takes many layers because I have to wait till the first layer dries before I can, apply another color or another layer.
I think all of these paintings have a lot of layers on them.
Yeah, they do.
And lots of colors when you look deeply, very closely.
Yes.
Are there any works in particular you'd like to draw our attention to?
Oh, gee.
Seems like a bowl. I think you've talked to individual people.
Well, it
about
seems like a bowl, yes, I suppose so, because there's an optical illusion in it that I
That's the
found quite
far one divided.
surprising, because I didn't realize it. If you look at that colored band, it can be seen either as the inside of a larger bowl, or it can be seen as the concave outside of a smaller bowl. Can you see that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But I wasn't aware of that. It sort of blew me away when I discovered that. The inside and the outside were so related. It's
And you touched on the fishes and the loaves. And what about unfathomable? Would you like to talk about that?
unfathomable. Well, it's just this small bowl shape that's just infinite. It's just full of everything possible. And that's it.
And you're making an invitation to people. viewers.
Yes, if somebody would like to have that, I'm asking that they write me, I say an essay, like a paragraph or two, telling me why they might like to have it, and then I'll choose an essay and I'll let the person know by November 1st. Because I think, everybody needs art in their house. I mean, it's the energy, it's I don't know, it's just the reality of things that we don't all see. You have to have it. And so if you can't afford it, I'm giving you a chance to have some.
Plus, Steve and I are fond of the saying by Dostoevsky, art saves the world. Art will save the world.
I think it's
L'art sauvera
true.
le monde.
Yes, it's true, I think so.
I hope the high school kids will have a chance to write an essay about your work.
Well,
That's
I
a
hope
good
so,
idea.
too. That's a great idea, Mary.
Let's invite Suzanne Allen's class to look at it.
Yeah, her art students.
Oh, that would be wonderful. Thank you for that. We'll see if we can do it.
How can it be, as you have stated, that a small town is the new avant-garde?
Not only that, it's the new underground.
Very underground.
Yeah. Well, I lived in Toronto for a long time. I lived in New York, of course, but so many artists I know are leaving the cities, and they're being driven out really by the cost of things. And this is nothing new to artists. I mean, you just follow the trendy real estate buildings, and you know that the artists were there first. And so many of my friends are moving to more rural and smaller areas. Virginia Eckhorn, my friend who's now the curator at Quest, who Mary knows quite well, now lives in Midland, for instance. Anna lives in Barry's Bay. We're all moving to smaller places. It's affordable, and I think because of the internet as well, it's possible.
You're linked. Anyway.
Yeah, because it's no longer really necessary to live in a big city. I think it's necessary at some point to go to sort of the epicenter of art, like New York, to see what's happening and be there and be savvy with it. But you don't have to live there to make your work, I don't think so.
Speaking of the internet, you have a lot of things that can be seen on your Instagram. That's how you would direct people to the
Yes, I
internet.
do, yeah. Kate Brown Painting on Instagram.
And I'm going to just quote Virginia Eckhorn.
Oh, okay, wonderful.
I think this is a good finale. Brown has stated that for her, space is important as an entity in and of itself, as is space as force. She aptly demonstrates how force and space exist in myriad of forms through abstraction, and creates works which are uniquely hers, intellectually rigorous, yet sublimely beautiful at one and the same time. So, I think that's a wonderful thing to end with. Thank you very much.
Noreen, thank you very much, and thank all of you for being